Hey everyone. Just wanted to talk to you guys real quick and give you guys kind of an update on the podcast. So, this Thursday, we'll have a podcast that's going to be discussing finances and how to deal with finances in a second marriage or a third marriage or a fourth marriage. I don't know where you are in your life, but there's nothing wrong with that. You keep trying, you keep doing it till you make it. So, no judgments here. But, some people who are on their second marriage or looking to be in a second marriage, that could be a very difficult thing to swallow because it depends on what your first marriage was like. It also depends how the divorce went. So we'll be discussing about finances and why that's an important feature of getting married a second time. So I want to start off a little bit, just kind of reviewing the family proclamation, right? So in the family proclamation, I'm going to read it here. It says, "Fathers are," and I'm highlighting it here, but fathers are to preside over their families in love and righteousness and are responsible to provide the necessities of life and to protect their families, right? So for you guys out there, it's the 3 P's, right? There's 3 P's involved here. Preside in righteousness. You need to provide. That means food, house, right? Money, whatever it takes. So you're to provide and you're to protect. So we live in a crazy world out there. We live in a world where people are being pulled over or pulled off or pushed off the road in their Teslas to be attacked by crazy people that are protesting. We saw recently in 2020 where a man shot into a car in Provo, Utah, of all places, during a protest. So, protect. It's important, but presiding is important too. Yes, we need to be priesthood holders and we need to preside in our homes. We need to do it in righteousness, not unrighteous dominion, but in righteousness. And we need to provide and to protect. So think of those 3 P's, guys, when you're trying to build yourself up and make yourself eligible for marriage. Women, either consciously or subconsciously, will look for those 3 P's. They will look for those 3 P's. So, guys, if you're not doing the things you're supposed to be doing to represent those 3 P's, start working on it now. Okay. For women, mothers are primarily responsible for nurture of their children. In these sacred responsibilities, fathers and mothers are obligated to help one another as equal partners. So it sounds like the scales are a little imbalanced in that statement, but it's not. Raising children, nurturing children, teaching children, it's a tough job. It's a big job. So men, you got 3 things you got to do. Women have one. They need to nurture their children. Men need to preside, protect, and provide. So, and you're supposed to do both those things in equal partnership. Now, when it refers to equal partnership, it's not that sometimes men have to, change diapers. Sometimes that's true. Men have to get up in the middle of the night and help feed the baby. That's true. Equal partnership, right? But it doesn't mean that you send your wife out into the world to work if she doesn't have to. Now, if you need to, you need to have that. You need to have that extra income to make ends meet. By far, if she needs to work, she needs to work, whatever it takes, right? If she can't, then men will get a second job, right? So we have this equal partnership, and that equal partnership is the family. So let's think of it this way. Let's think of a business, right? You and I want to get into a business. Maybe I'm really good at carpentry. I am really good at computers and cybersecurity, right? So maybe we're starting a business and I'm really good with computers and I'm really good with cybersecurity, and you're really good with, like, say, construction, and we're opening up a business. We form a partnership. Okay. We draft a partnership agreement. In that partnership agreement, we outline our responsibilities, right? Our strengths, we will amplify and we will put in that agreement that, hey, Corey, you're the computer guy. You're going to work on all the computers. You make sure they're all safe, that we don't get hacked. We don't lose our client records. And I'm a carpenter and a contractor, so I will make sure all the construction projects are completed and that we hire the right people and that they're done right. Okay. Now, I don't think if you were a carpenter, you would want some computer guy to go and start laying walls and putting drywall up and putting a ceiling in or laying concrete. Like, you don't want me doing that, right? Because now I could probably do it, but it's not going to come out great, right? Anybody could probably pour a bunch of concrete out. It's just not going to look good unless you're a professional. Nor would I expect a carpenter to set up the server, set up the router, set up the switches, and to set up any kind of intrusion detection systems, and then monitor those intrusion detection systems, and to then respond to cyber incidents, right? I wouldn't expect that of you because you don't have that skill set, and you wouldn't expect me to be a carpenter or a mason guy because I just don't have that skill set, right? A strong skill set. And marriage is the same thing, right? Marriage is the same thing. Like, we have our strengths and we have our deficiencies, right? And that's why we partner. When we get into business together, we want to partner with the best partner. We want a partner that brings something to the table that we don't have. All right. So when you read the statement like we're equal partners, yes, we're equal partners in the business. We're equal partners in the family. We're equal partners in the marriage. But you bring skill sets that I don't have, and I bring skill sets that you don't have. And so we have to think about those things, right? Now we get back to the finances and money, right? This is what we're going to be talking about on Thursday, but I just want to kind of give my 2 cents, that kind of brings it home. We'll be talking about. So finances, right? Yes, men are to provide. So men are generally responsible for providing, right? But sometimes in second marriages, we're a little older. The kids are a little older. Maybe they're growing up. Maybe, they got a couple of years before they're off to college, right? So maybe at that point in a woman's life, she started a career, or she went back to school and got a degree, and now she's starting a career. So she's starting to make her own money. And, or maybe after the divorce, when they split up the assets, she received her half of the kingdom, and she's got quite a bit of money in stocks and bonds. Maybe she owns a property or two, and, that's her little nest egg. That's the stuff that she earned in her first marriage. And she probably feels like she probably should protect that. And I totally would agree, because what if second marriage doesn't work out, right? And she's got to fall back on living on her own again. So yeah, she needs to have her little nest egg. She needs to keep the piece of her kingdom that she created in her first marriage. And I agree. And it's the same with men, right? Some men, they got put through the ringer. Some women use divorce as payback, as punishment, and they will drag things out. They will hire attorneys. They will fight tooth and nail. And I'm sorry to say, but if you're an attorney out there, don't take offense by this, because there are some bad ones out there. But some attorneys would just be like, fine, you want me to file briefs? You want me to go to court? You want me to file more briefs? I'll just keep billing you. And attorneys will bill you until you're poor. And so I've heard of guys that have gotten divorces that cost $100,000 to get a divorce. I mean, that's some just ridiculous amount of money. And they spent another $100,000 because they were, they had a crazy wife that was punishing them for divorcing them. And they also dragged the kids into it. So then they had custody battles, and she drug it out. And so men feel very hurt sometimes. There's a lot of men out there that are financially recovering from a disastrous divorce that could have easily ended amicably, maybe through a mediator, and could have divided the kingdom up, and everybody would have gotten their share, and you wouldn't have paid all of your kingdom's wealth to a bunch of attorneys who just said, "Yep, I'll file those briefs for you. I'll go to court for you," and just sucked you dry. So there's a lot of men that have come into, financial ruin, and they've had to start all over. And so when they get to their second marriage, they're like, okay, I'm finally broken even. I'm finally back to normal. And they're scared. They're scared to get into a marriage with somebody that might punish them again. They're a little bit of PTSD, a little bit of stress, right? Now let's flip the coin, right? I know there's some women out there that were like, man, I had to fight tooth and nail to get my piece of the kingdom. And I'm worried that a man might, try to encourage me to, invest in risky investments and risky businesses, or, pay off his debt. Maybe he acquired a whole bunch of debt from his divorce, and maybe maybe these women who are getting these marriages are worried that this man's going to pressure them to help pay off his debts, and they don't want to give up their piece of the kingdom that they built. So I get that. That's very scary, and it's very unnerving, right? So, how do we get around this, right? And we'll talk a little more about this this Thursday, but how do we get around these things? Like, how do we navigate these financial issues, right? And another thing that's very interesting, that I find very interesting, is that all of these new divorce laws, like I got divorced in California, and California is what they call a no-fault divorce state. Now, those types of laws were created because we used to punish people for quitting on their families and quitting on their marriages. Yes, divorce was granted, but there was a toll to pay. There was a penalty to pay. If say I was say there was a man out there who chronically cheated on his wife, and in the olden days, right, he'd hide money, he'd hire attorneys. His wife was a stay-at-home mom, and she got screwed over. And I understand the reason for a lot of these law changes, right? But these men, before the no-fault divorce thing, is that there's good intentions behind the law, but those laws get manipulated and they get twisted, and they find loopholes. And the loophole nowadays, so in the old days, a man would cheat on his wife. The wife would go to court, and she'd provide evidence, and the judge would see that the man cheated on her and committed adultery, and he would award the woman, more than half the kingdom, because she needs to receive some restitution for what the guy did, right? I get that. But a lot of men said, hey, that's not fair. I still want to cheat, but I don't want to lose more than half my kingdom. So they go and they press laws, and they press their state legislatures to change the law from a punitive type divorce law to a no-fault divorce. That's crazy. Think about that. No-fault divorce. Like, hey, I could go cheat all I want. No penalties, no repercussions. And that's not the way to go. But, and there's some women out there that are a little bit crazy too. I'm talking about crazy guys that are out cheating, right? There's some crazy women out there that also cheat, and they don't want to be left. They don't want to be divorced. And so what they will do is they will prolong the divorce, even though it's a 50-50 no-fault divorce state, and there's nothing they can do to get more than 50%. They will act like they can get more than 50%, and they will hire attorneys to, do forensic analysis and look at the books, and hire private detectives to look for supposed, hidden bank accounts, and, maybe there's gold buried in the backyard, right? And they just keep expending money, because they know in the end, they'd rather burn it all down and everybody leaves broke than to let anybody win, let anybody take their 50% of the kingdom that they jointly built up. So I know I'm rambling, but we're going to talk some more detail this Thursday about, finances. Like, how do we deal with finances, right? How do we bring in finances? I think for men, they're very leery, especially if, say, they've been divorced for 10 years and they've built up a life after divorce. They've built up their savings. They've bought some real estate. They have a retirement account. Maybe they're in retirement now, and they're concerned that they might marry another crazy woman who they didn't spot the red flags, or the person hid themselves very well, and then they get into a relationship and it's not working out. And then, somebody says, I deserve half. And you're like, we were married for 2 years. No, you don't. And they start to hire attorneys, and they start taking you to court and start spending on all these attorneys' fees to try to get something. They know they're going to lose in the end, but they're going to punish you for leaving them. That's what men fear. So you ladies out there, just understand that. Now, the other fear that men have is that there's hidden debt. So you marry a woman, you find out she's got tens of thousands of dollars in debt. And for one reason or another, that could be a red flag, or it could be, man, I have 8 kids. My husband left me and he's a loser and he couldn't pay spousal support. He couldn't pay child support. And so I've had to make ends meet. And yes, I've got a little bit of debt. So, you know, how do you deal with that? Right. I mean, what point does a man feel like he should help pay off that debt? And maybe what reason does a woman have to expect that man to pay off that debt? So those are things that are going to be discussing this Thursday. Those are things that are, I think, that are on our mind. I don't think people want to talk about these things because they're tough conversations to have. And I think that there's a lot of hurt feelings when people talk about prenuptial agreements. Now, I think the word prenuptial agreement has been soiled over the years and has had a negative connotation. I would like to look at like an agreement, a marriage agreement, like a partnership agreement in a business. In a partnership in a business, you lay out your duties, you lay out what you're bringing to the table. Like, I'm bringing money, my skill, you're bringing your skill, your money. We're putting it into the business together to grow this business together. And in that agreement, we talk about distribution of assets. Like, how are we going to distribute the net income? Are we going to reinvest like a third and then you get a third and I get a third? Or how are we going to, divvy out the profits? And if by chance my business partner dies, like, how do we restructure the business if there's a death, right? Because I might get into business where my partner's wife is like, I'm not a carpenter, but I want to be a partner in the business. I want to keep getting that income. And like, wait a minute, like, what do you mean you want to keep getting the income? So, so in a partnership agreement, you have a life insurance policy on your partner. And there's an agreement that says, hey, if I die, I want you to cash in that life insurance policy that you're the beneficiary of, or the business is a beneficiary of. And I want you to write a check to pay my spouse out for my share of the business. So you get an insurance policy, so it's not a burden to have to buy somebody out. And you also make an agreement that, hey, your wife's going to get a check and she's not going to be part of the business, but she's going to get bought out and she's going to get her share. And that's how we, the other option in the business agreement too is like, what if we decide we don't want to work together anymore? What if we have a disagreement and we want to break up our partnership? How do we go about doing that? Does one partner buy out the other partner? Do we flip a coin? Do we roll a dice? Like, you can put anything you want in there. Like, so say we're 50-50 partners and we just don't get along anymore. And I want to buy you out. And you say, no, I want to buy you out. And now we have this conflict of who's buying out who, right? We could put in that business agreement, partnership agreement that says we will flip a coin. If we have a dispute on who's buying out who, we both agree to flip a coin. Okay, very simple. So why can't we have a marriage agreement? Why can't, on our second marriages or third marriages, have an agreement written up that says, you go through the lists and you say, here's all the what ifs. Here's what we're bringing to the table. And let's go down the what ifs. What if there's a death? How does her kingdom assets that she brought into the marriage, how does that go? What does she want to give up? Does she want to give a little bit to her husband? Does she want to give all of it to her kids? Like, you have to have those agreements, right? Because then what's going to happen is you're going to have all these fights and all these court hearings of saying, the kids will be coming in saying, I don't think my mom would have wanted her second husband to have $10,000 upon her death. We want all of her stuff, including that $10,000. So you can have all these disagreements where family members come in and start fighting over assets, right? So you have to have these agreements. Like, what if there's a death? Okay. Do we want to buy do we want to buy life insurance on each other or not? Where do we want to be buried? Like, do you even know if I want to be cremated or if I want to be buried? Do I want to be buried in a mountaintop? Do I want to be buried in the ocean? Like, you have no idea until we have those conversations, right? And maybe you're like against cremation, but I'm not. And I'm worried that, you might not honor my wishes. So I want it in an agreement that you have to honor my wishes upon death. What happens if we decide we're going to break up? What if it doesn't work out? Like, how do we end the relationship? How do we end it financially? Are we going to do it through a mediator? Are we going to hire attorneys? I mean, how are we going to do it? Right? That all should be spelled out. And it's funny because nobody wants to spell those things out. So if it's important financially in a business partnership to have a partnership agreement that outlines all of these what ifs, then why is it not important to have a marriage agreement and iron all those things out, right? Why does everybody get hurt feelings about that? It's just strange, because marriage is a financial bonding. It's a financial agreement between two people, right? We're bringing finances, we're buying things together, we're paying things together, we're like, all of that stuff should be spelled out. So I don't know. So what do you guys think? If you guys have some ideas, you want to put them in the chat, you want to, come Thursday night, we'd really love to have you Thursday night on a live show and post your comments, find out what we're going to say, and it'll be an interesting discussion because, think about it. Like, one of my favorite shows to watch is The Big Bang Theory. Probably many of you guys have seen The Big Bang Theory, and Sheldon is a character in that show, if you haven't seen it. And he is, he's very smart. He's probably on the spectrum a little bit. And he loves relationship agreements. So when he has a roommate, he forms a roommate agreement. When he has a girlfriend, he has a relationship agreement. And when he gets married, he forms a marriage agreement. So it's a continuation of the relationship agreement. But it's so funny. If you ever want to go back and look it up, or go online and look up Sheldon Cooper's relationship agreement, you can actually read like some of the stuff about like how many date nights a month are we going to have, and like they just ironed out every little detail. Like, how are we going to celebrate Valentine's Day? What are the requirements? It's really interesting. But I just don't understand why we don't have a marriage agreement. We just jump in head first, and we make no plans. We just don't do anything like that. So I don't know. What are your thoughts? Put in the comments. If this is something that you think is important for somebody to see, please share this video. Go down, share it, like it, hit that thumbs up. If you like our videos and you like this video, hit that thumbs up. And definitely share this video with people you think could benefit from our podcast on Thursday, and send them the link. Send them a link for when we set it up on Facebook. You can also share this video and say, hey, tune in on Thursday for the live 1 hour conversation about finances and marriage. I'm going to bring the male perspective, and I'm sure Joyce and Celeste will bring the female perspective. And Celeste is now married again for her second marriage. So she is going to bring a married perspective to finances on a second marriage. So we look forward to seeing you on Thursday night, and we'll see you then.